when this system, the master points, the MR system rolled out, John, you were not happy about it. And there's some trepidation. You were like, this is not what this was supposed to be, and it's stupid, and it sucks, and I'm going to switch to JP. Now, let's talk about the effectiveness of the MR system. Go ahead.
So my big problem with the MR system was basically that Capcom's like, hey, here's this brand new system. We're not going to explain one bit of how this works. We're going to say that you can bet points or whatever like that. Where's the betting? And the betting apparently happens just whenever you go into a ranked match and queue it up and you are a master rank. That's apparently where you start betting points. And it does appear that the master rank system is based on the ELO system, or LO system, or like chess and a bunch of esports like uses. And since the system has now evolved and we're starting to see a separation here, the biggest problem with the master system before was that league points, basically you could accrue those pretty much endlessly. Your win rates, a bunch of other stuff did not matter that much. Now master rank, the system there, it does seem to give a good differential between what a player's skill is, if they're at like 2,000 master rank points or if they're at like 1,500 or somewhere around there. There's a very defined skill level difference, if you ask me.
Absolutely.
And so I feel like the system, like myself, has come in, and now that I've gotten some time with it, I really wish Capcom had like a proper explanation for how it works. Shoutouts to them saying, hey, we're going to explain stuff, and then never doing it, never talking about it, because shoutouts to Capcom, that's what they do. But I'm really curious what your guys' thoughts have been, and this is kind of like, I know a lot of people listening to this are not in the master rank, they don't get this experience, but so this is kind of like an inside baseball conversation here, but I'm really curious, how has the experience been for you guys?
It's been, I don't really look at league points anymore. Now that I absolutely do as I'm playing Lily, for instance, and trying to get to master rank, because my goal is surrounded around league points. It's directly tied to that. But really, especially the way they were set up, and they were set up this way for a specific reason, and that is to encourage players to continue playing. You want that dopamine reward of seeing your points go up, and that was way out of whack in early Street Fighter V and all of Street Fighter IV. You could grind all day and getting 1 or 2 points for every win, come across a laggy platinum Rashid, lose like 3 days worth of work if you were to not lose otherwise, and it would just take all the wind out of your sails. This is a little on the other side with league points, because you're always getting like at least 50 points, I think, and maybe if it's really disparate then not so much, but you're always getting a lot and you're not usually losing a ton. And so this really translates to, there's an element of win rate, sure, but it's really amount of time played. League points, the higher you get with that, it's more like you logged enough hours to get that high. Maybe you got there a little faster than others, but who knows? Master rank points are how you are doing right now, your last, handful of games. It's reflective much more of your win rate in recent times. So I pretty much only look at that now.
Yeah, I kind of feel like the master rate stuff is basically like Street Fighter 4's player points, and I think that's a good system. You can have your character league points, and it shows how much you've grinded with that character and how much you've won and stuff, but player points were always a really good, at least in my experience, they were a really good indicator of how strong the opponent was going to be. So if you had somebody in like the 4,000 player point range, they were probably a tournament player or a pro, or they were up there, and you knew that was going to be a fight, right? And it almost always was. It was pretty hard to kind of, generate those points without being actually really good at the game. And it feels like MR is basically the same thing here for Street Fighter 6. It's I think the most we've seen so far is like maybe like 21 or 2200 for the master rate stuff right now. Average, you usually see like about 1500, that kind of stuff. You can gauge kind of where the opponent's going to be in terms of skill with that stuff. So I think it's a nice addition. I do still look at league points for myself just because I have personal goals that I want to hit with that stuff. But MR is definitely an important factor now for sure. And it feels like it's done pretty well. It can be harder to gain points as you kind of get higher up in that stuff, but that's what people wanted. It was very much an answer to the early complaints of Street Fighter 6 of getting master rank is too easy and it's not really much of an accomplishment. That was a lot of the discourse among the higher level players early on. Mm-hmm. So it does feel like the MR system is a very good answer to that so far, at least from what I've seen.
Let me read Nakayama's statement, I think translated from an interview with Indie Games back in July. He says, responding about the master rank system, yes, we're developing certain systems for top-level players. We touched on it in the Street Fighter 6 showcase before the game's release. But we're planning to add a master league, and with it have limited periods of times which we refer to as acts, where players can gain points specific to the league and wager them in matches against each other. And so first of all, that wager thing I think has been a point of issue a bit, that it's like, well, does that mean we're going to get to choose how many points we want to put up, and then you have to agree? I think it's just lost in the translation here, and I think it's just implied that once you are both in master rank, you will be competing for each other's specific reservoir of these points. And there was a point earlier he made that like one of the alterations they wanted to make from Street Fighter 5 to 6 was to make the point system feel more inviting and less deflating, and also give faster rematches. And if you had a whole extra step of putting in the amount of points you want to wager and then eventually agreeing on it with, you might have negotiations or something, that's not going to work for keeping things flowing and rolling. So even here in this same interview, I see a little bit of evidence that would say maybe that's not exactly what they meant. But I just wanted to touch on that really quick. But otherwise, this is also supposed to reset every so often. I don't know if they gave a specific window here. I wanted to say 3 months, but I didn't see that the second time I looked through it here. But the idea that this would kind of reset, and that's kind of similar to what we would see in other types of games like MOBAs and stuff like that, is cool. And I think that they are really dipping into the things that have worked. And I'm like most other parts of this game and this experience, I'm happy with it.
Yeah, I'm pretty happy with it too. And I wanted to give our audience a little bit of a visual here. I was speaking with Seth Killian at Evo a year before, and he basically was talking about how like the trajectory, and let's see if I can get this on camera here, I'll do it this way, is normally like this, kind of at like, oh boy, this angle right here. And then the further you go up the chain, it starts to arc like this. Where if you're going against like the punks or the idoms or the daigos or the tokitos, to get up to this point right here is very hard to do. But going from like gold to silver or getting to master rank, but once you go on, it really starts to arc up and becomes much more challenging. And I wanted to illustrate that a little bit for our audience here who hasn't gotten there. So the game gets quite fascinating at that level. And you also start to see anomalies develop where characters like Alex can be number one in Street Fighter 5 in Capcom's own personal development house, where it's like they're playing all the time. They're professionally like paid team there. Like their job is to play the game at the highest of high levels and to just destroy each other. And so you can see anomalies like that develop, and that's why characters like Cammy or Rashid can stay unnerfed for so long, because internally they're not charting as great as they are in the community. And so it's an interesting balance here of taking in all aspects of the game where you can't just balance at the highest of high levels, because you can get caught in a vacuum in that regard. And stuff like Zangief's Lariat in Street Fighter 4, which was initially way too strong, people felt like, at least, they learned the tech around it and they got better at it, and that kind of permeates throughout all the levels of play, basically. So it's really important to factor in not only just the high-end people, but the lower end, and what kind of experiences are happening, especially with like super oppressive moves that may just be decimating them. So it's quite the interesting thing to look at here, if you ask me.
Well, that sounds like it wrapped up all we had to say about that.
Yes, and please hit us up in the comments. We are definitely checking those out and reading them. You guys can see Talking Block here. It's the name of the show. It's all about having a discussion. We love hearing the feedback, even if it completely disagrees with us, especially if it disagrees with Velociraptor. It's definitely okay. Leave that in the comments. Please. And yeah, we love the feedback. And hit us up with JP stuff, because we can't get enough of that character.
Especially Velociraptor. He loves hearing about JP so much and how not good he is. So please direct all your comments towards him. I'm sure his Twitter's on screen right now. Hit him up for sure.
You guys realize I'm the one that edits this, right? Hey guys, hope you enjoyed that bit of Street Fighter 6 banter from that episode of Talkin' Block. If you'd like to see more like it, you can right here. And if you'd like to see the whole episode once it goes live, it'll appear right here.